So today we're dealing with another wonderful cartoon from Impact 360 Institute, which is basically a weird apologetics channel that tries to be hip and cool and relevant in all the classic ways that evangelical groups try to be hip and cool and relevant. For more of a summation of my first impressions of this channel, go ahead and watch my earlier response to their cartoon on tolerance. But before we dive into today's video, I want to invite you to take part in the Sing the POZ Theme Song Challenge. Basically, you can make up your own lyrics to my intro music, which was originally composed by Ross Bugden, linked below, then record yourself singing it and send it to me. Here's an example from our first taker, Objectively Dan.
Prophet of Zod is really rad. I wish that he was my dad. He will talk about the Bible and how it's full of libel.
Wasn't that just great? So if you want to submit your own, feel free to send it to me by email or possibly Facebook. Links are below. I don't know, it's something to do while you're at home. And also, of course, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. That all said, today we'll enjoy a cartoon that I think tries to insinuate that anything a person believes or does is more or less okay as long as it's part of their worldview. A stance I'm sure the creators of this video would maintain across the board, since Christians are equally tolerant of other lifestyles from other worldviews. I mean, it's not like they just use this as a one-off rationale for why they should be taken seriously in spite of lack of evidence for their position before turning around and shitting on anybody who believes anything else. Right?
This is Sasha. This is Sam.
Okay, so these two were so distracted by their devices that they walked out of an elevator at the same time, and the horribly out-of-date and unsafe doors closed hard enough to slam them together. Ha-ha, I guess. Now, in spite of how utterly hilarious this was, you may be worried that they got burned by all the hot coffee they spilled all over themselves. But trust me, your concern for them will diminish greatly the more you hear them talk. Oh, and the black coffee came out of her cup and the cream coffee came out of his, in case you were interested.
When they first met, it was just small talk about where to find the best coffee, the new high top she just bought, a book of poetry he found at a used bookstore, a new local band she discovered just last weekend, a zombie apocalypse movie he saw last night with some friends from his martial arts class, her homemade screen print t-shirt, and his favorite Chinese restaurant, which made them both hungry. So they got 2 orders of Mandarin chicken with brown rice. And then Sam opened his fortune cookie.
Yesterday, I woke up, shut off my alarm, ate breakfast, drove to work, worked, had lunch, worked some more, drove home, took off my jacket, took off one shoe, and then I took off the other shoe. Sounds strange, right? I mean, I guess the fortune cookie is going to become pivotal or whatever, but this is a weird sounding way to focus the narrative on it.
Life's journey ends with a new beginning.
Whoa, that's deep. But in the real world, life's journey ends with an ending. When you die, you're done.
Well, yes, your body no longer works, but your soul continues to exist, don't you think?
Your soul? No, I don't believe in ghosts. We're physical creatures, material objects, just a collection of highly organized atoms. When your brain flatlines, that's it. Game over.
Okay then. So it turns out Sam is an atheist, and boy do they just get right down to characterizing him. Because while I suppose most of what he says is technically correct, everything about how he says it reeks of having been written by Christians who learned everything they know about atheists from other Christians and are, due to some combination of ignorance and malice, passing these stereotypes on to even more Christians. I mean, how many weird, ugly details can you pack into 30 seconds? Let's break it down, shall we? First, notice how quickly he pivots from small talk to gratuitously belaboring the fact that when you're dead, you're dead. I mean, maybe some atheists are always looking for socially inappropriate chances to talk about this, but I haven't met any of them. And second, what sets off this rant? A fortune cookie that says, "Life's journey ends with a new beginning"? Seriously. Who's this unprepared for, and quickly triggered by, the vapid platitudes you find in a fortune cookie? Well, I guess an atheist character written by a Christian, that's who. But even then, what's so wrong with life's journey ends with a new beginning? Maybe this is just saying your death leads to a new beginning for others in the world. I don't know. There are a lot of things this kind of pointless deepity could mean. So it seems, we'll say, less than flattering to portray an atheist not only being this overly literal about the language of a fortune cookie of all things, but so badly itching to make a point about it that he brings up death on a first date. And look at how he describes death. That's it, game over. Because you're not an atheist in a Christian sketch, unless you're so cold and clinical about death that you almost seem to revel in its scientific finality. And of course, he says that humans are just material objects, a highly organized collection of atoms. Which, come on, stop it. No atheist I'm aware of talks this way, and no atheist I'm aware of thinks this way. And you know why? Because even in a godless universe, we're not just a collection of atoms, any more than a house is just a stack of wood. It pains me to have to explain something so obvious, but the material is just what we're made of. And if consciousness arises from that material, should we disregard what the resulting being experiences just because of what it's made of? No. This doesn't follow at all, which is why atheists don't say it, and Christians only put the idea in our mouths to mock and belittle us. Because let's be clear, this whole idea comes from Christians. Atheists don't think we're just collections of atoms because God doesn't exist. Christians say we would be just collections of atoms if God did not exist. This is their statement about the inherent value of human life, one they weaponize to make atheists sound cold-hearted and to claim that disregard for life is inherent in our worldview. So yes, I'm going to jump straight on this language when they try to put it into our mouths. If you want to say a conscious being made of atoms is only atoms, that's on you. Own it, Christians. Proudly proclaim it as your own psychopathic assessment of how you would treat others if they didn't have a supernatural soul. But don't try to put it on us, because this is your sick view of a godless world, not ours.
So you don't believe in life after death?
No. I mean, it's a comforting thought, but there's just no scientific evidence for it. I'd rather face the real world than believe in a fairy tale.
He didn't have to be that rude about saying it, but true.
Yeah, I agree with you, Sam. It's best to face reality, but it may be that life after death is reality. I mean, think about it.
So this is where we need to be crystal clear about the terms of the conversation going forward. After he said he wants to respond based on reality, she replied, maybe life after death is reality, followed by, think about it. Which implies she's going to give him reason to suspect there actually is life after death. Right? And considering that this video is trying to suggest an equivalent between Christian and atheist worldviews, a lot rests on whether she can give any reason whatsoever to consider this a likely thing to believe. In fact, everything rests on her reason. Because if she just tosses it out as an unsubstantiated guess, we're not really comparing two plausible worldviews. We're comparing the practice of sensibly responding to what you actually observe with centering your life on a wild guess that's as uncompelling as any other wild guess. So while this video is going to try to rush us by her explanation, let's keep very close track of why she says we should think there's an afterlife. Ready? Ready? Here comes her evidence.
If life just ends at death, then everything we do or say comes to nothing. What meaning or purpose can our lives possibly have?
So literally, her argument, which lasted 11 seconds by the way, is that our lives would have no meaning unless there's an afterlife. Not only is this wrong and a gross thing to say, it's a mere appeal to consequence, which I know you all know. She said nothing about why we should think there's an afterlife. She argued for why we should want an afterlife, which, so what? I mean, yeah, we've all been through this drill 1,000 times, so I don't need to belabor it. But keep in mind that so far, this is all her position rests on, and be on the lookout for whether she offers anything else.
Well, I guess my life has whatever meaning I choose to give it. I personally believe in truth, beauty, science, making the world a better place, saving the environment, freedom of speech, and, tolerance.
I guess that's a good enough list. It's oddly long and specific in a way that feels packed with conservative Christian dog whistles, and tolerance feels tacked on with a little sarcastic irony, especially in light of their previous Are You Tolerant video. But okay, I guess.
Yes, that's all well and good. But what does all that matter if it ends in nothingness?
It comes to the experiences you had and the legacy you leave to other people. I mean, if you have a stack of 5 marbles, they don't come to 0 because you finished counting them, right? This is one of the most tired, obnoxious things Christians say, and it's so easily destroyed by counterexamples, such as why do you eat a meal if you end up finishing it, or why do you go on vacation if it ends up being over, that I feel like I'm flogging an overly obvious point, so I'll let it go.
What are your thoughts about God?
Which God? There are millions of gods.
Millions of gods? That seems like an exaggeration designed to make atheists sound ignorantly dismissive, but whatever.
The God that's in the Bible.
It's been proven that the Bible is just a bunch of mythology written by ancient desert nomads.
You have to watch for the details in these things, and the fact that he says, "It's been proven that the Bible is blah blah blah," is an important one. Not only does it strawman atheism and make atheists sound nasty, but, at least by implication, it sets the terms of the conversation such that the atheist should be trying to prove the Bible false, and that it would be natural for everybody to assume the Bible carries some weight until it's been proven false. But this is giving it too much credence from the start. Honestly, I don't care if the Bible's been disproven. My issue is it hasn't been proven. And by that I mean not that individual facts from it can be verified, but that we have clear, compelling evidence of God, miracles, and so on. And no, not every uncaused cause must have a cause-type evidence, but the clear evidence that would get a Christian believing in anything other than their own religion. Until that's provided, the Bible can, and should, sit on the shelf with UFOs, fairies, and all the rest and wait to be incorporated into an intelligible assessment of the world we live in and how we should respond to it.
But you know, if faith in God makes you feel good, I won't argue with that. But I personally prefer more of a rational, open-minded approach to life. Here's what I believe, Sasha. You shouldn't think anything is true unless it's been scientifically proven.
Ooh, this is an extremely narrow criteria for belief that you just know was deliberately put in the atheist's mouth to set up counterexamples. We believe a lot of things that you might not call scientifically proven, depending on how you use the phrase. Starting from infancy, we absorb a lot of observations into our understanding of what the world is and what we should expect to see in it next, and it's based on this that we learn intelligent behaviors. And we construct this understanding without having to do what most people would call scientifically proving everything we rationally believe. I mean, has it been scientifically proven that your parents exist? Has it been scientifically proven, and I mean to you personally, that stubbing your toe hurts? Has it been scientifically proven that it's a good idea to get to work on time? That the sun will come up tomorrow? A lot of things are so clearly evident through observation, or are obvious summations of what we consider constructive behavior, that you don't really have to scientifically prove them. Rigorous science is applied to more complex aspects of reality that we need disciplined methodology and usually specific technical expertise to reach reliable conclusions on. So to say, you shouldn't think anything is true, unnecessary comma, unless it has been scientifically proven, shows that you're probably a fictional character serving up a slow pitch so some other fictional character can say,
But has that belief itself been scientifically proven?
And there we have it. It's kind of like sticking your finger into an electrical outlet in that it had a shocking feel to it, but hopefully you were smart enough to see it coming. Basically, this video is dealing with 3 belief-forming habits. One is informally but intelligently operating based on what you observe in the world around you, along with parsimonious inferences you make about it. You know, the method every high-functioning adult uses to live a life that isn't a complete disaster. A subset of this is using formal scientific processes where necessary when you have the expertise. And outside this circle is where you'll find all the weird, unsubstantiated people appear to have just made up. Like, you know, the idea that our personalities continue to exist in ethereal forms that float to heaven after we die. Sam, though he's doing a very poor job of articulating it, wants to live in this main circle, even if he doesn't always employ technical scientific methodology to come to every conclusion he reaches. But Sasha notices that he slipped and used the word scientifically proven inappropriately, and so the video has her jump on this opportunity to suggest a dichotomy between the weird-ass things outside the circle and rigid scientific inquiry, deliberately ignoring the intelligent middle ground in which most of us live. Basically, the idea is that if science is your only rationale for belief, and you can't scientifically prove a statement about the value of using science, then you might as well just shrug, stop using observation and common sense to filter good ideas from bad, and accept literally everything as just a worldview, because how can you know anything? Of course this is stupid, but the video treats it as a slam dunk. And of course Sam is a fictional atheist written by Christians, so he just says like a deer in the headlights as if this level 1 idiocy blew his mind, so we can ignore everything stupid about what Sasha said and just move on.
Sam, you and I look at life very differently.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like we're from different worlds.
Not different worlds, different worldviews. A worldview is the set of lenses through which you see the world around you. It's a web of habit-forming beliefs that helps you make sense of all your experiences. Through your worldview, you interpret life in a particular way. It affects how you think, how you feel, and how you live from day to day. To understand what your worldview is, think carefully about the big questions of life.
Yeah, this is more or less true. Your worldview is made up of habit-forming beliefs, and they do impact how you live your life. The problem is in this video's insinuation that something's status as a worldview gives it an automatic pass and makes it as valid as any other worldview. I know this assumption has the feel of open-mindedness to it, and worldviews are big and complex enough that it seems almost natural to just throw up your hands and say, everybody have your own and show equal respect to those of others, even though too many Christians want to receive this respect without reciprocating it, but they don't all deserve equal respect. And to illustrate why, I'd like you to imagine two other people, Susan and Bob, each of whom has developed habits based on beliefs that constitute their worldview. Susan has developed a habit of buckling her seatbelt whenever she drives her car. This habit arose from her belief about what might happen if her car ran into something else. This belief in turn rose from a series of observations, including those slow-motion videos of what happens when a car gets into a collision, as well as a general understanding about momentum, impact, and human injuries that she's developed over the course of her life without really thinking about it. So while she doesn't explicitly identify as atheistic or naturalistic, her understanding of how things work, as well as the resulting concerns she acts on, add up to her behaving according to a more or less natural worldview. Bob, on the other hand, has developed a much different habit, that of smearing feces all over himself. This habit arose from his belief that doing so will hide his scent from invisible flesh-eating monsters. His body of beliefs about these monsters forms the lens through which he views the world, makes what you might call a certain kind of sense of his experiences, and yes, is most decisively habit-forming. So hey, it's a worldview, right? Yet I bet you see Bob's worldview and resulting behavior is very different from Susan's. But why? Well, I guess the thing that jumps out at you fastest is the fact that smearing shit on yourself is unhealthy and gross, but there's a deeper, far more fundamental issue at work here. See, Bob may arguably understand the grossness of what he's doing. However, his underlying beliefs convince him that the urgency of avoiding invisible flesh-eating monsters outweighs the grossness of having feces all over him. So assuming the validity of his worldview, thus granting the belief that these monsters exist and will eat you if you're not covered in shit, his behavior is actually perfectly rational. But why would we make this assumption? We shouldn't, because until he can demonstrate that these monsters exist, that they might eat us, and that being covered in poo helps avoid this danger, he's frankly just acting batshit crazy. He's reacting to dangers he doesn't see around him, that probably originated in and only exist in his head. And while this isn't necessarily the definition of irrational behavior, it lies pretty close to it. So if he tried walking around in public covered in poo, or throwing it at others to protect them from monsters, people wouldn't just shrug and say he views the world through a different lens. They'd quickly take him to task for his behavior, and if he tried appealing to his beliefs, they'd have every reason to expect him to justify why he holds them. Similarly, Christians can't just label their beliefs and behavior as a worldview and consider it equal to other worldviews. I'm sorry, but the assumption that your consciousness remains intact after you die is not evidence-based. Worrying about where that consciousness might float upon death is not rational, and responding to this concern by uttering prayers to beings you can't see, joining religions, and going around urging others to do the same is not normal, well-adjusted behavior. These are just facts, regardless of whether our society has developed too much respect for Christianity to point them out. Sure, Christians' behavior is rational, assuming their worldview, but we have no reason to grant them this assumption. Look, I know they like saying that if our houses were on fire, they'd warn us, so they should also warn us of hellfire. But they, as surely as Bob, are reacting to dangers we don't see around us and that only exist in their heads. If you want to act on this kind of belief privately, don't expect people to think you're making sense. If you want to bother people in public about this belief, don't expect them to thank you for it, and in fact be ready for them to act a little put out. If you think your simple, unfounded belief entitles you to pass laws structured around your understanding of what an invisible God wants and what happens to your invisible soul after you die, you're wrong, and we have every justification for openly opposing you. In short, if you think the kind of belief of Bob or Christians gets a pass just because it's based on a worldview, then you have literally no filter to distinguish the rational from the irrational and to expect basic responsible behavior from others. And Christians, if the lens you're looking through leads you to do things you deep down suspect are crazy, don't just call it a worldview. Try to adjust your lens so you can see more clearly. We have every right to expect that from you. This program was made possible by a grant from S.R. Foxley, Bob Generic, Nem Morris, Connor Emsley, Susan Schindler-Loreto, and Q, and by the generous support of viewers like you. If you'd like to join them in pledging to this channel, please find a link to the Prophet of Zod Patreon below.